So picture this. You are lying there in pitch black silence and you are just utterly exhausted.
Oh, yeah. We know the feeling.
Right. I mean, your physical body is drained to absolute zero. You've been running literally since the alarm went off, putting out fires at work, navigating through terrible traffic, managing like 100 tiny crises all day.
Just a standard Tuesday.
Exactly. So why is your brain currently sprinting on a treadmill at maximum incline?
Yeah, that's the real question.
It is 2 in the morning, your bones feel like lead, yet you are completely, totally unable to actually shut down. I think we have all been there, right? Staring at the ceiling, trapped in that bizarre paradox of being physically depleted but mentally electrified.
It is an incredibly frustrating state to find yourself in. I mean, we tend to operate under this really flawed assumption that human beings are just, biological smartphones.
Right, like a battery gauge.
Exactly. You use the battery all day, it drains down to 1%, and then the screen just naturally goes dark. But we aren't simple machines.
Clearly not.
No, because depletion doesn't automatically trigger relaxation. In fact, for a lot of people, emptying the tank actually triggers this state of hyperarousal.
Wait, really? Like a panic response?
Yes, exactly like that. The system panics because it's empty, so it just floods you with stress hormones to keep you alert. It thinks you're in danger.
Wow. Okay, that makes so much sense, and it completely reframes how I think about the end of a long day. If the battery is empty, but the system is actively panicking, just lying down on a mattress isn't going to fix anything.
No, it won't. You're just lying there vibrating with anxiety.
And that is exactly the puzzle we are going to solve in this deep dive today. Our mission is to explore the absolute mastery of energy allocation.
Which is huge.
It is. And we aren't looking at time management here. Time management is almost irrelevant to this. I mean, anybody can color code a calendar, right?
Yeah, anyone can block out an hour.
Right. We are looking at how to actually manage your internal energy, how to build a healthy daily rhythm, how to genuinely rest, how to forcibly flip that mental switch after work, and, how to balance our deep psychological need for comforting routines with the absolute chaos of real life.
And our roadmap for this exploration comes from a really fascinating set of source materials today.
Yeah, these were so interesting to read.
They really were. We are examining this highly curated, deeply reflective series of personal Q&As and journals. It is essentially the documentation of one person's ongoing real-world journey to find a sustainable equilibrium between work, rest, and life.
It reads like a very intimate, highly detailed energy audit, honestly.
Which is so much better than a dry clinical study, I think.
Oh, for sure. Because it feels lived in. It's messy, it's honest, and it gets right to the core thesis of the material, which is energy management is an inherently active process.
Right.
It is not something that just passively happens to you while you wait around for it.
And that is the central pillar we really have to establish before we go any further. Because if you just let a modern Tuesday happen to you, if you just wake up and passively respond to your environment, you will end up completely drained.
Oh, 100%.
Modern life is literally engineered to extract your attention and your energy. So the reflections in our source text make it abundantly clear that protecting your energy is this fiercely guarded, intentional practice.
You have to build the architecture of your day.
Exactly. Because if you don't actively build it, the day will build it for you. And I promise, it will not be built for your benefit.
No, it definitely won't. So, if we are going to build this architecture, we have to start by looking at the foundation. Before we can even talk about generating energy or resting properly, we have to figure out where the energy is leaking.
We have to find the holes in the bucket.
Right. And according to this audit we're looking at, the primary energy drain, the absolute biggest enemy of a balanced life, is context switching.
Yes.
Dealing with way too many distinct things at the exact same time.
Context switching is arguably the silent plague of the modern knowledge worker. To understand why it's so devastating, we kind of have to look at the cognitive mechanics.
Okay, let's get into it.
Why is bouncing between 5 different tasks so much more exhausting than locking into one incredibly difficult task for, say, 3 straight hours?
Right, because 3 hours of deep work feels good, tiring, but good.
Exactly. It comes down to how your working memory operates. When you sit down to focus on a complex task, let's say, mapping out a project strategy, your brain actually has to load up the rules, the relevant memories, and specific context for that project right into your working memory.
It's kind of like setting up a physical workspace then. You have to get all your specific tools out on the desk before you can actually start building anything.
That's a perfect way to look at it, and it takes a significant amount of biological energy, like actual physical glucose, to load up that mental workspace.
Wow. Great, yeah.
But once it is loaded, you can operate relatively efficiently. You find a flow state. The real problem arises when you are interrupted.
Which happens every 5 minutes.
Right. Let's say you stop to answer a Slack message about a completely unrelated administrative issue. To answer that message effectively, your brain has to aggressively sweep all the project strategy tools off the desk, go into the mental archives, find the rules and context for the administrative issue, load those up, and then process the interaction.
Oh, man. And then the second you hit send on the message, you have to do the whole painful process in reverse.
Precisely. You dump the administrative rules, try to recall where you even were with the project strategy, and reload that massive context all over again.
Which takes time.
It doesn't just take time. It
Mhm.
consumes a staggering amount of cognitive fuel. It creates this constant grinding friction in the brain.
Okay, my mind immediately goes to a computer analogy here. It feels exactly like having way too many browser tabs open at the same time.
Absolutely.
I'm sure you know this feeling. You've got like 20 tabs open. A massive spreadsheet is loading in one. A YouTube video is paused in another. Your inbox is auto-refreshing in a third.
And your computer starts to hate you.
Yes. At first, the computer seems totally fine. But eventually, you hear the internal fan start spinning like a jet engine. The bottom of the laptop gets physically hot on your legs. And the whole system just slows to an agonizing crawl.
Yeah, clicking from one tab to the next suddenly takes 5 seconds.
Right. The computer isn't broken, it's just completely overwhelmed by the background processing. Is our brain literally doing that?
That analogy holds up beautifully because it highlights the invisible cost of the switching. You see, the energy isn't just being consumed by the single tab you're actively looking at.
It's all the other stuff.
Exactly. All those other tabs, the unfinished email, the looming deadline you just remembered, the conversation you had to pause, they are drawing background power. They are constantly pinging your working memory, just reminding you that they exist.
So your brain is never truly dedicated to one thing.
Never. It is constantly maintaining the architecture of a dozen different unfinished tasks.
Which brings up a very specific, honestly agonizing type of browser tab mentioned in our sources. The absolute worst offender for draining energy, long meetings.
Oh, yes.
But the text is very specific here. It's not just the length of the meeting. It's long meetings that conclude without any clear decisions being made.
The decisionless meeting. This is such a profound insight from the author.
Why is this uniquely exhausting, though?
Well, it comes back to how the human brain processes narratives and problems. Our brains are hardwired to seek closure. When a problem is introduced, the brain automatically initiates a cognitive loop.
It wants to solve it.
Right, wants to resolve the tension, categorize the solution, and then file it away so it can finally stop spending energy on it.
So when you sit in a meeting for 90 minutes, your brain is actively revving up. I mean, it's engaging with the problem, weighing all these options, anticipating a resolution. You are burning fuel under the assumption that there will be a payoff at the end.
Yes, exactly. But then the meeting ends with someone saying, great discussion, everyone. Let's circle back to this next Tuesday.
Ugh, the worst.
The problem isn't solved. The action plan isn't clear, so the brain just doesn't get to close the file. The cognitive loop remains wide open.
So you walk out of the conference room or you log off the video call, but subconsciously, a huge portion of your mental bandwidth is still trapped in that meeting, trying to find the ending.
That's it, exactly. This lack of closure bleeds your background energy for the rest of the day. You feel profoundly drained, not because you worked hard, but because you worked hard without resolving anything.
That is deeply unsettling because it means I'm bleeding energy long after the actual event is over.
You absolutely are.
But it makes me wonder, if we know multitasking is a massive battery drain and we know context switching is burning out our mental hard drives, why do we keep doing it? I mean, I'm guilty of this every single day. Is it just this illusion of efficiency? Because I almost feel like I'm addicted to switching tabs sometimes.
It is highly addictive, for sure. And it is largely driven by a modern work culture that mistakenly equates motion with progress.
Yes. If I'm moving, I must be doing something.
Exactly. When you are rapidly switching tabs, firing off emails, and jumping between small tasks, you feel incredibly busy. And we have been deeply conditioned to interpret that feeling of busyness as productivity.
We get a little dopamine hit every time we clear a notification, even if it didn't actually move the needle on anything important.
That's the trap. It is a shallow reward system. We prioritize the urgent over the important because addressing the urgent provides an immediate, albeit tiny, sense of closure.
Right.
The reality, as our source material acutely points out, is that this constant shallow switching leaves us cognitively devastated by 5 o'clock. And this sets up a critical trap.
Okay, what's the trap?
Well, after a day of leaving all these loops open, after hours of cognitive friction, our natural instinct is to just collapse. The workday ends, and we just want to instantly power down.
Right, which brings us right back to that pitch black room from the very beginning, or, I guess more accurately, the living room couch.
Usually the couch, yeah.
We drag ourselves to the sofa, we pull out our phones, and we attempt to rest. But the sources highlight this as a massive point of failure. We fall into what they call the fake rest trap. I found this part of the audit so confronting, to be honest.
It is confronting, definitely, because it challenges our fundamental definition of what resting actually is. The source text makes a really crucial distinction here.
Which is?
That simply lying in bed or sitting on a couch and scrolling on a phone is technically resting the physical body. I mean, your muscles are relaxed, you are horizontal, but it completely fails to make the person feel mentally refreshed.
Because to the brain, it isn't rest at all, is it? I mean, it's the exact same behavior that exhausted us during the day. When I'm doom scrolling at night, I'm looking at like a friend's baby picture, then immediately swiping to a massive geopolitical crisis, then a recipe for pasta, then an ad for sneakers.
Yeah, you are demanding that your brain process rapid fire, highly variable, and extremely emotionally volatile information every 3 seconds.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
Think about the cognitive load required to jump from joy to existential dread, to hunger, to consumer desire in the span of maybe 15 seconds.
Yeah.
The mental friction hasn't stopped at all. It has merely changed platforms.
Wow.
Passive resting might feel like you've turned off because you aren't producing deliverables for your boss, but neurologically, you are still sprinting on that treadmill.
I look at it this way, and tell me if this analogy tracks for you.
Sure.
Imagine you have spent the entire day hiking through a desert. You are severely dehydrated. I mean, your body is screaming for water.
Okay.
But instead of drinking a glass of water, you sit down in the shade and start eating a giant bag of salty potato chips.
Oh, man.
Right. You are physically doing something, your mouth is moving, you are consuming calories. It mimics the act of nourishment, but the salt and the crunch do not hydrate you. In fact, they actively make you thirstier.
That's such a good way to frame it.
Scrolling on your phone when your brain is desperate for cognitive rest feels like eating junk food when you are dying of thirst. It's this weird imitation of recovery that provides zero actual relief.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That analogy tracks perfectly. It is empty cognitive calories. And the source material doesn't just point out the problem, it actually defines what true restorative resting looks like.
What does it say?
It says it is not merely the absence of corporate labor. It involves getting sufficient sleep, of course, but it also explicitly requires quiet time without thinking about work. And counterintuitively, it involves active recovery.
Active recovery, like what?
Things like going for an EV run or intentionally listening to music without doing anything else at the same time.
Okay, but I kind of want to push back on this a little because the text also brings up a massive psychological roadblock here, which is guilt.
Yes, the productivity guilt.
Exactly. The author notes that even when they try to rest properly, there's this profound sense of guilt, a feeling that time is just being wasted. And I think this is so common for all of us. Why does modern culture make us feel like criminals just for pausing?
It's a deep-seated issue.
Right. Is it possible that we use our phones and our fake rest not because we actually enjoy it, but to numb the anxiety of all our unfinished tasks?
That is a very perceptive reading of the situation.
Yeah.
I mean, we have deeply internalized this Industrial Revolution mindset.
Yeah.
That human value is directly tied to output. If the machine isn't producing, well, it must be broken.
Which is so toxic.
Extremely. So when you try to sit in intentional quiet time, which is genuinely one of the truest forms of rest, that silence doesn't automatically feel peaceful. For many people, that silence actually becomes a vacuum.
And nature abhors a vacuum.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So all the anxiety about those open loops and unfinished tasks just rushes in and gets amplified in that quiet.
The inner critic gets really loud. You should be doing the laundry. You should be answering that email. You are falling behind everybody else.
Yes. And to silence that inner critic, what do? We pick up the phone. The scrolling provides just enough sensory noise to drown out the anxiety, but not quite enough actual engagement to require deep thought.
So it's a distraction.
It acts as an anesthetic, not a cure. We are basically medicating our productivity guilt with digital noise.
An anesthetic, not a cure. That is a brutal truth. So how do we actually beat that inner critic then? How do we cure the exhaustion if sitting still just makes us anxious?
Well, the breakthrough realization in the source material, and this really requires a complete paradigm shift, is redefining the actual purpose of rest.
Okay.
The realization is that prop and rest is productive.
Wait, rest is productive.
Yes, because it is the biological enabler of recovery and future performance.
That requires a pretty fundamental rewiring of how we view our time, though.
It absolutely does. We have to move rest out of the category of, indulgence or laziness and place it firmly in the category of performance requirement. Consider professional athletes. An elite runner doesn't view a rest day or 8 hours of sleep as cheating. They view recovery as literally the second half of their training.
Right, because the muscle doesn't get stronger while you are lifting the weight. It gets stronger while you are sleeping.
Precisely. The damage happens in the gym, the growth happens in the bed,
Yeah.
and the source text has arrived at this exact same conclusion for cognitive work.
So my brain needs the same treatment.
Yes, your brain cannot synthesize complex information, generate creative solutions, or regulate your emotions if it is never, ever allowed to repair its neural pathways. Rest is not the opposite of productivity. It is the biological prerequisite for it.
I understand the logic. I really do. I mean, if I accept that rest is productive and I accept that doom scrolling is fake rest, I still have a mechanical problem here.
What's the problem?
How do I actually force my brain to make the transition? Because as we just established, if I just sit on the couch and tell myself, okay, perform restorative rest now, the anxiety immediately creeps in. My brain doesn't have an off switch. How do I forcibly switch off productive mode and enter restorative mode?
This is where the source material provides a highly physical, incredibly effective intervention. To sever the mental ties to the workday, you really cannot just use willpower.
But power never works anyway.
Exactly. You have to use physiology. The text explicitly highlights exercise, specifically running and strength training, as the ultimate tool for mentally switching off from work. It is positioned not just as a health habit, but as a critical psychological boundary-setting mechanism.
Let's really linger on the mechanics here because I think people hear, go for a run to clear your head, and it just sounds like a self-help cliche.
It does sound like a cliche, but there's hard science behind it.
Right. So how exactly does lifting a heavy piece of iron or running 3 miles actually sever a mental tie to a stressful email? The source says that focusing on physical sensations like breathing, pacing, and muscle movements naturally forces the brain to stop thinking about unfinished tasks. But why does that work?
It comes down to biological bandwidth and survival priorities.
Yeah.
Your central nervous system has a finite amount of conscious attention to allocate at any given moment.
Okay.
When you are sitting at your desk, your physical body requires almost zero conscious management. You are literally just sitting in a chair. That leaves 100% of your cognitive bandwidth available to obsess over office politics, analyze spreadsheet data, or ruminate on a past mistake.
So your brain just has too much free time, essentially.
Exact. But consider what happens when you start a heavy set of squats, or you try to maintain a really challenging pace on a run. Suddenly your body demands that bandwidth.
It takes over.
Right. Your brain receives a flood of urgent sensory input. Your heart rate is spiking, your muscles are burning, your spatial awareness becomes critical so you don't, drop a weight on yourself.
Right. You literally cannot safely squat a heavy barbell while worrying about a Zoom meeting. Your brain is screaming, pay attention to your balance, breathe, do not die.
Yes. Physical presence demands mental absence from the abstract worries of work. The brain is forced to immediately reallocate its resources to physical survival and coordination.
That makes total sense.
By demanding that bandwidth for the physical body, you effectively starve the work-related anxiety loops of the attention they need to survive. You aren't just politely asking your brain to stop thinking about work, you are biologically forcing the browser tabs to close.
I absolutely love that framework. I picture it kind of like a mental airlock.
An airlock?
Yeah, in sci-fi movies, when astronauts want to move from the harsh, toxic zero-gravity environment of space into the safe, breathable environment of the ship,
Oh, yeah.
they don't just open the door. They have to go into an airlock. The outer door closes, the pressure equalizes, the toxins are scrubbed away, and only when the environment is completely neutralized does the inner door open.
I love that.
This intense physical workout is the airlock between the stressful environment of the workday and the safe space of home.
That is a phenomenal visualization. The workout scrubs the cognitive friction from the system. And this explains a common frustration people have, actually.
What's that?
Sometimes people will say, well, I went for a slow walk around the block after work, but I was still stressed. A walk is wonderful for light recovery, but sometimes it just doesn't demand enough bandwidth.
It's too easy?
Right. If physical activity is too easy, your brain still has leftover capacity to ruminate on the unresolved meetings.
So the intensity of the airlock has to match the intensity of the stress.
Exactly.
If you had a mild day, maybe a walk or some light yoga is enough to equalize the pressure. But if you had a catastrophic, high-stress, high-conflict day, you might genuinely need to go sprint up a hill or lift something incredibly heavy just to force the system reboot.
There's absolutely a correlation there. The higher the cognitive arousal from stress, the stronger the physical intervention needed to hijack the nervous system and break the cycle. And our source text adds another really vital layer to this transition protocol, which is music.
Music, how does that fit in?
Well, after the physical exertion forces the brain to stop thinking about work, intentionally listening to music helps shift the mood entirely.
It's brilliant. The exercise scrubs the old paint off the walls, and the music paints a completely new color for the evening. It sets a whole new emotional tone.
Exactly.
And then there's one final piece of this daily transition mentioned in the audit, right? The evening routine, specifically preparing for the next day.
Prepping for tomorrow during that evening quiet time is a masterful strategy for solidifying the boundary. By taking 5 minutes to lay out your clothes, or just reviewing your calendar for the next morning, you are sending a very specific signal to your subconscious. You're essentially saying, tomorrow is handled, the plan is in place.
You are giving your future self a head start, but more importantly, you are giving your current self permission to actually power down.
Exactly. You are convincing your amygdala, the threat detection center of the brain, that it doesn't need to stay on high alert overnight.
Yeah.
You have safely docked the ship. The tabs are actually closed, not just minimized.
So if you are listening to this right now, I really want you to honestly evaluate your own routine. What is your airlock? What is the specific activity, ritual, or physical boundary that forces you to transition from the digital ether back into your physical body?
It's a crucial question.
Because if you don't intentionally build an airlock, the toxic atmosphere of the workday is going to bleed straight into your living room, into your dinner, and into your bed.
And if you fail to establish those personal boundaries with your work, you will be chronically depleted, which leads to a really fascinating downstream effect.
Oh, what's that?
If you have no energy left, you cannot properly navigate your social life. You just won't have the capacity to establish boundaries with others.
Oh, right. This brings us to a part of the text I found deeply illuminating. Let's talk about the social energy matrix.
Let's do it.
We have spent all this time talking about how to reclaim our internal energy and stop the leaks. But once we actually have that energy, how do we decide how to spend it? Specifically, how do we navigate the constant decision between seeking company and seeking solitude?
It's a delicate balance, and the source material offers a beautifully analytical, almost clinical approach to making this decision.
Yeah, they really break it down.
They do. The individual notes that the choice between socializing and isolating shouldn't be based on like a fixed schedule or a sense of obligation. It should depend entirely on diagnosing the root cause of your fatigue.
A diagnostic approach. I struggle with this so much, honestly.
Most people do.
Sometimes I feel exhausted, so I cancel my plans and I just stay home by myself. But then I end up feeling even worse, more drained, and almost depressed. Why does our inner battery gauge get it so wrong sometimes?
We get it wrong because we treat all fatigue as if it is identical. We assume exhaustion always requires the exact same cure, which is isolation.
Right. Tired equals alone time.
But the text lays out two very different scenarios that require entirely opposite treatments.
Okay, let's hear the first one.
The first scenario is pretty straightforward. If you are tired because you have been around people too much, or you've just endured a highly stimulating, chaotic day, the correct prescription is absolutely alone time to recharge.
Which makes logical sense. Social interaction, even with your absolute favorite people in the world, is an energy expenditure.
Oh, massive.
It requires active listening, empathy, decoding body language, and formulating responses. If your cognitive battery is already flashing red from context switching at work all day, adding the processing demands of a dinner party, even a really fun one, will eventually lead to a crash. In that scenario, solitude removes the demand to perform.
Correct. Solitude is the absolute antidote to overstimulation. But here is the second scenario, and this is where we usually misdiagnose ourselves. Right. The source says, If you've been alone for too long or you feel stuck in your own thoughts, the prescription is not more rest.
Wow, okay.
The prescription is friends and casual conversation to break the loop.
This is a profound insight. Solitude is restorative, but it has a very real dark side, doesn't it?
It really does. When you are alone for too long, especially if you are stressed, solitude mutates from a sanctuary into an echo chamber.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
When you are stuck in your own thoughts, your brain is typically circling a problem, generating all these hypothetical anxieties and magnifying small issues way out of proportion.
Yeah.
Why? Because there is no external input to provide friction or perspective.
It's like staring into a mirror for way too long. Have you ever done that?
Yeah, a little bit.
If you stare at your own face in a mirror for like 10 minutes, eventually your features start to look totally alien and distorted. You lose all objective perspective. Being stuck in your own head is the mental equivalent of that.
That is exactly what happens. The rumination loop just feeds on itself.
Mm.
And in that specific state of fatigue, isolation is the worst possible thing you can do.
Because it just fuels the fire.
Exactly. Casual social interaction acts as an anchor back to objective reality. Simply talking to a friend about a movie or shared memory, or even mundane daily tasks, forcefully interrupts that internal monologue.
It pulls you out of yourself.
It pulls your attention outward, grounding you in the external world. It breaks the spiral.
I love thinking about this like a thermostat. People are always so quick to label their entire identity based on a static state, like, I am an introvert, therefore I always need to be alone to recharge, or I am an extrovert, I always need people.
Right, the labels are too rigid.
But this text suggests our needs are totally fluid. You have a thermostat. You don't just turn the heat on in your house in November and leave it running forever, regardless of the weather outside. You adjust the dial based on the actual temperature of the room.
Precisely. If your internal room is freezing, meaning you are feeling isolated, detached, and stuck in a rumination loop, you need to turn up the social heat. You need connection.
Right.
If your internal room is sweltering, meaning you are overstimulated, touched out, and socially exhausted, you turn on the AC and seek the cool quiet of solitude. The mastery really comes from having the self-awareness to accurately read the room of your own mind.
Which is incredibly hard to do when you are tired. As we said, we just choose the path of least resistance.
Always.
Canceling a dinner and putting on sweatpants feels easier in the short term than showering and leaving the house. But if your fatigue is born of isolation, staying home is just drinking salt water again. The source material forces us to pause and ask the diagnostic question. Am I exhausted from too much input, or am I exhausted from too much internal echoing?
And once you answer that question truthfully, you apply the correct remedy, whether it's the airlock of a solo run or the anchor of a conversation with a friend.
Okay, so let's step back for a second and look at what we've built here today.
It's quite a structure.
It is. We have this amazing theoretical matrix. We know how to stop the drain of context switching by closing the mental tabs. We know how to avoid the trap of fake rest and doom scrolling. We have established our physical airlock to transition out of work mode, and we have a brilliant diagnostic tool for managing our social energy.
This great toolkit.
On paper, it sounds flawless. It sounds like a beautifully structured, perfectly optimized daily routine, but
reality is never perfectly optimized.
exactly. Life is inherently chaotic. You
Yeah.
can plan your airlock workout perfectly, but then a client calls with a massive crisis at 5:00 p.m., or a pipe bursts in your kitchen, or a friend drops by unannounced.
Life happens.
What happens when this carefully constructed structure shatters? Because a rigid routine is great right up until it breaks, and then it can become a source of immense stress. How do we balance a profound love for routine with the absolute necessity of flexibility?
The source material addresses this exact tension head-on, actually, and with a lot of vulnerability.
What do they say?
The individual acknowledges having a very strong preference for knowing what to expect. They love planning things in advance. And consequently, when plans suddenly change, it causes a significant spike in initial frustration.
Which is such a relatable, honest admission.
Mhm.
When you have carefully budgeted your energy for the day and someone throws a wrench in the gears, it genuinely hurts. It's not just a logistical annoyance. It feels almost like an emotional violation of your boundaries.
It feels like a violation because a routine provides a psychological sense of safety and control. When the routine breaks, the safety is compromised.
So you panic.
Your brain goes into a minor threat response.
Yeah.
But what is truly masterful in these reflections is the coping mechanism described immediately after that frustration.
How do they handle it?
The reaction doesn't end at anger. The defined strategy is to adjust quickly, Focus only on what can still be controlled, accept the minor changes without resentment, and immediately create a new plan.
Focus only on what can still be controlled. It sounds so incredibly simple, like a bumper sticker, but in the heat of the moment, when your plans are ruined, it is brutally difficult to execute.
Oh, it is the ultimate exercise in emotional regulation. When a meticulously planned day falls apart, the amateur mind fixates on what was lost.
Right, I was supposed to go for a run.
Exactly. It ruminates on the unfairness of the situation, which, as we know, burns massive amounts of cognitive energy.
Back to the open loops.
Yes. The mastermind, however, immediately surveys the new, chaotic landscape and asks, what are my available moves right now?
I love that.
By radically accepting the change and focusing on the controllables, you stop the energy drain of anger and channel whatever bandwidth you have left into practical adaptation.
But even in the midst of adaptation, even when the schedule is blown to pieces and you are constantly pivoting, there has to be something that holds the entire frame together, right? You can't just float in total chaos.
You need a foundation.
And the source text points to what we can call an anchor habit. There is one thing that is fiercely protected no matter what, and we talked about it earlier. It's the time for exercise.
Your anchor habit.
Yeah.
The text notes that even when life gets overwhelmingly busy, even when plans change left and right, the time for running and strength training is protected because it brings indispensable physical and mental balance. It becomes the non-negotiable center of gravity.
I think of this like a tent pole.
A tent pole.
Yeah. Imagine you were out camping, you've set up this beautiful, complex tent, but then a massive storm rolls in.
Oh, boy.
The wind is howling, the rain is pouring down, the stakes are getting ripped out of the mud, and the fabric of the tent is flapping wildly in the wind. The environment is pure chaos, and your original plan for a peaceful night is totally ruined.
This was miserable.
But if that one solid center tent pole stays upright and planted in the ground, the whole tent stays standing.
I see.
It might be messy, you might be uncomfortable, the sides might be flapping, but the core structure survives the storm. The exercise time is that center tent pole. If you can keep that one promise to yourself, you can weather the chaos of the rest of the day without completely collapsing.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. The anchor habit is less about the physical benefits in that moment and more about proving to yourself that you retain agency.
Yes, I am still in charge of this one thing.
You are still in control of something. However, I think it's crucial to point out that the source material is also wonderfully honest about the fact that this equilibrium is an ongoing, imperfect struggle.
They don't have it all figured out.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It is not a finished masterpiece. Specifically, the text highlights a current active point of failure, trying to fix a sleep schedule that has been repeatedly disrupted by late-night phone and video usage.
Ugh. The late-night screen time strikes again. It's the fake rest trap making a comeback, even for someone who is clearly highly self-aware.
It gets the best of all of us.
The goal stated in the text is aiming for earlier bedtimes and maintaining consistency, even on the weekends. And I found that detail about the weekends so fascinating.
The struggle to maintain sleep consistency on weekends is a perfect illustration of the deep tension between our psychological desire for freedom and our biological demand for routine.
How so?
During the work week, our schedule is dictated by our jobs. We are forced into a rhythm. But the weekend feels like our time. We want to reclaim our autonomy.
It reminds me of a concept psychologists talk about, revenge bedtime procrastination, where you feel like you had so little control over your time during the day that you stay up late at night watching videos just to prove to yourself that you have some autonomy.
That's exactly what it is.
You steal time back from the work week, but the tragic irony is that you are essentially just robbing your own energy reserves from your weekend self.
Exactly. You are sacrificing biological necessity on the altar of psychological rebellion.
That is a great quote.
The problem is, your biology doesn't care that it's Saturday night. Your circadian rhythm operates on a relentless 24-hour cycle, regardless of the day of the week or your desire for freedom.
It's ruthless.
By attempting to force sleep consistency even on weekends, the individual in our source text is trying to align their psychological habits with their uncompromising biological reality. Because sleep is the ultimate foundational habit.
If the sleep schedule cracks.
Everything falls apart. The exercise tent pole gets much harder to hold up, the context switching at work becomes infinitely more exhausting, and the lure of fake rest becomes almost impossible to resist.
Everything is interconnected. The energy matrix relies on all of its parts functioning together, which leads us to the ultimate conclusion of these reflections. How does this person actually define a balanced life?
It's a great definition.
After all the audits and adjustments, the definition they arrive at is taking the career seriously, but not letting it consume all their energy. It is about intentionally maintaining distinct, protected time for work, for exercise, for relationships, and for quiet, restorative rest.
It is a profoundly holistic definition, and it reveals a really mature understanding that balance is not a static state.
Right. It's not perfectly even every day.
Balance is not a pie chart where everything gets a perfectly equal slice every single day. True balance is dynamic. It is the ability to shift your weight when the terrain changes without letting the entire structure collapse.
Kind of like surfing.
Yes, it's having the acute self-awareness to know when the career requires a surge of focus and having the ruthless discipline to pull back when that career begins to cannibalize the energy required for your health or your family.
So if you are listening, I have another question for you to ponder. Think about your own daily rhythm. What is your center tentpole? What is the one foundational habit that you absolutely refuse to sacrifice when the storm hits and the schedule falls apart?
It's worth figuring out.
If you look at your life and realize you don't have one, maybe that is exactly where you need to start building.
Because without that anchor, without that one non-negotiable habit, you are entirely at the mercy of the day's demands, and the day will always demand more than you have to give.
Okay, let's take a deep breath and recap the incredible journey of this deep dive today. We started by shining a light on the invisible leaks in our energy, the brutal, glucose-draining cognitive friction of context switching, and the agonizing open loops created by those decisionless meetings.
We then confronted the very uncomfortable truth about our habits, dissecting the fake rest trap. We analyzed how passive doom scrolling mimics recovery but actually perpetuates mental friction, and we completely redefined proper restorative rest, not as an act of laziness, but as a non-negotiable biological prerequisite for future performance.
From there, we walked through the concept of the mental airlock. We explored how demanding physical activities, like running or heavy lifting, forcibly evict work anxieties from our brain by hijacking our biological bandwidth and forcing us back into our bodies.
We examined the diagnostic approach to the social energy matrix, learning how to adjust our internal thermostat based on whether we are suffering from environmental overstimulation or the isolating, spiraling echo chamber of our own thoughts.
And finally, we grounded all of these theories in the messy tension between routine and flexibility. We highlighted the absolute necessity of an anchor habit, the biological challenge of weekend sleep consistency, and the ultimate goal of a dynamic, truly balanced life. It's an incredible roadmap. It really makes you evaluate every hour of your day.
It does. It forces a level of intentionality that is, frankly, pretty rare. But if we connect all these dots, if we look at this entire architecture we've discussed today, this actually raises an important final question for us to consider.
Okay.
A bit of a paradox to end on?
Oh, I love a good paradox. Lay it on me.
Well, we have spent this entire discussion establishing that proper rest is highly productive. We have successfully reframed it as essential for our future performance, likening it to an elite athlete's recovery protocol.
Right. It's the smart way to operate.
But here is the provocative thought. If we start viewing our rest only as a tool to make us better at our jobs, aren't we just turning rest into another form of work?
Oh, wow.
Think about it. If we optimize our sleep and we rigorously schedule our quiet time and we track the heart rate of our easy runs on a smartwatch solely so that we can be a more efficient employee in a cubicle on Monday morning, have we actually escaped the hustle mindset at all?
That's a lot to process.
How do we protect the absolute sanctity of our downtime? How do we ensure that rest remains a joy, a space for simply existing as a human being, and not just a biological maintenance protocol designed to serve our economic productivity?
That is a really, really uncomfortable truth. We've spent this whole time optimizing rest, but if we aren't careful, we've just turned relaxing into another item on our KPI dashboard.
Exactly.
We are optimizing ourselves just to be better cogs in the machine. That is definitely a thought to chew on. You have to protect the joy, not just the function.
Absolutely.
So I want you to go back to that image we started with. You are lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, wired and tired. The next time you find yourself in that pitch black room, don't reach for the phone.
Leave it on the nightstand.
Recognize the open loops. Acknowledge the cognitive friction. Maybe get up, read a physical book, listen to some music, or just let the quiet be quiet without feeling guilty about it. Take a deep breath. Tomorrow, maybe try building your mental airlock. Find your tent pole. And for now, gently close the tabs of your day. We're going to log off too. Until next time.